Hello and welcome to today's webinar, our fourth episode in the four-part series of the Security Masterclass. On this episode, you'll learn about driving velocity and intelligence to your data recovery. This event is brought to you in partnership with Rubrik and produced by Actual Tech Media. Thank you so much for joining us from across the United States and around the world. We appreciate your support here of the Security Masterclass series. If you've been on the previous events, excellent. You kind of know what to expect here. If not, I encourage you to check out the handouts tab there, where you will find links to recordings of the three previous events in this series, so you can kind of get up to date. The idea here is to rapidly get up to speed on protecting your data with the most innovative data protection solution in the world today to help better protect your company's most critical resource, its data, and better secure your IT infrastructure and protect yourself from ransomware. And so we've been learning a lot so far in the series, and I'm excited about this episode. I hope that you are as well. Before we jump into it, just a few things that you should know. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'll be serving as the moderator. We want this to be educational. We will be doing a live Q&A session, and we encourage your questions. I'll talk about the best question prize here in just a moment as well. We also, in addition to the links in the handouts tab to the three previous episodes, have some other resources that you want to check out there in the handouts tab. You'll find a link to the AppFlows data sheet, which you'll be learning about on the event. AppFlows provide for automated DR orchestration. There's a link to the Rubrik blog there that talks about the magic of an immutable backup architecture, and also a link to Rubrik's ransomware recovery solutions. So make sure that you check out all the handouts. I see many of you have posted already. Good morning, good afternoon, from around the world and across the United States in the handout or in the questions tab. So we appreciate those comments. Welcome to everyone, but we also want your technical questions. To help encourage those technical questions, we have our best question prize for a $50 Amazon gift card. We'll contact the prize winner of that gift card after the event via email. And just as with our Amazon $300 gift card door prize, which you may have heard about, which I'll announce at the end of the event, you must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions, which you can find also there in the handouts tab. And with that all out of the way, it's time to kick off today's event. I'm excited now to bring in our expert speaker for the Security Masterclass series, Mr. Jeff Inouye, Technical Marketing Architect at Rubrik. Jeff, it's great to have you back on the event again. Take it away.
And welcome to our final segment in our Masterclass series, where we're going to cover topics on data protection, data security, and extracting additional value from your backups. My name is Jeff Inouye, and I'm a Technical Marketing Architect here at Rubrik. And I'll be your guide today as we talk about orchestrated disaster recovery with Polaris AppFlows. As a recap of the first three parts of the series, in part one, we talked about our zero trust architecture, our immutable file system, and our defense in depth approach, and how we use all of these pieces to achieve tight security of backups. In part two of the series, we talked about leveraging metadata and how we collect that in line with your backups, and then we can use that in our applications like Polaris Radar to identify anomalous behavior. In our last segment, we talked about operational challenges of data classification and why data classification is so important when we're trying to protect sensitive data in our environments. So Rubrik takes advantage of that data at rest and then encompasses entire data environments to gain visibility to that sensitive data so you can remediate it. And for today's topic, we're going to talk about disaster recovery and how we have a new disaster scenario with things like ransomware. We'll talk about the current state of disaster recovery solutions and what point products and how those designs work. Then we'll introduce Polaris AppFlows. We'll take a look at how we approach that problem, and then we'll take a look at how it works, and we'll dive into a demo. So let's roll back the time 7 years or so. Compute virtualization is fully mainstream, and hopefully you have a good portion of your bare metal systems all redeployed on virtualization. Back then, disaster recovery solutions typically focused on a cratered site scenario. So, what happened was point solutions came to the market to address that particular need. But the new challenge for the sysadmin is how do we combat the scenario of ransomware? Or how can we quickly recover parts or all of data and services depending upon the scenario or the need? The point solutions of today draw from a similar theme that we talked about earlier in the webinar series, where the IT organization is responsible to bring the infrastructure to the table upon which the application is installed. The key issue, again, is that this introduces more complexity to the environment. So we have things like compatibility matrices, additional systems, and dependencies throughout the infrastructure. So if we take an example like a standard migration of primary storage, that now has added constraints because you have applications that are now dependent upon the code or configuration of the environment. So in this solution, what we have is the typical command and control server or vCenter. And then we have application servers that typically have databases that you have to manage. These provide the runbooks, the inventories, and the scripts. What these application servers then do is they will broker actions to the underlying storage system to support the recovery plan. So what happens is all these components need to successfully integrate to provide a working solution. And many times, the complexity of the solution can often fail to remain operational due to the configuration changes that always happen within an environment. So let's take a look at our approach. What we've done is we've simplified backup, archive in the cloud, and securely managing data end-to-end. So 3 years ago, we introduced Rubrik Polaris. And this is a location where you can manage all your data from a single location. You can provide actionable insights with Rubrik applications. So if we think about things like ransomware remediation with Polaris Radar, or data classification with Polaris Sonar. So with our summer release, we're going to be adding orchestrated DR for applications called Polaris App Flows. And what Polaris App Flows does is it simplifies the implementation for DR orchestration. So what we have is an integrated approach to the disaster recovery solutions that you're used to and provide failover and failback between sites and ultimately on-prem to cloud. So since this is in our ecosystem, we can have deep integrations with other applications like Radar available day one. So let's take a look at how it works. In our system, we use what we call application blueprints. And these blueprints act as an orchestration engine for recoveries. The key difference here is we're working with a single piece of software to manage the solution. So what we get is reduced overhead and less dependencies within the environment. We also have more intelligence since Rubrik is already aware of the environment. So adding virtual disks or virtual machines are dynamically included in the blueprint. For the fastest recovery in RTO, we provide a technique called hydration. And what this does is it seeds the base copies to a target's recovery storage, and then incremental data is applied to that base image. So everything is ready to go when you need it. We also provide near zero RPO with our integrated continuous data protection. So VM-based workloads with CDP that provide granular recovery within our product today can be integrated with AppFlow's blueprints on day one. We also provide full failover and failback capabilities, and both directions are supported. The other nice feature here is that new full backups are not required since Rubrik is object aware between clusters. And of course, we have rich reporting for tabletop exercises or ongoing audits. So let's jump into the demo and take a look at AppFlows, where we're going to take the insights from Radar and kick off a recovery operation. An IT organization faces a critical set of challenges when ransomware strikes. It's an all-hands effort to identify compromised accounts, systems, and data. Let's say that you have been hit by ransomware, and the only information that you have is that application and file services are affected. In this demo, we will identify the impacted data through Polaris Radar and perform an in-place recovery with Polaris AppFlows. From the radar dashboard, let's navigate to the anomalies page. AppFlows uses a construct of a blueprint, which is a collection of virtual machines and resource mappings that directs the system how to recover. It can be configured to orchestrate a successful application recovery, being mindful of the dependencies required. As you inspect the dashboard, it is clear that there is suspicious behavior in 2 of our applications. When you expand the blueprints, you can take a closer look at the details and identify which systems and data have been compromised. The multi-select capabilities allow you to initiate complex recoveries driven by a simple interface. When you click Recover, you can initiate the start of a recovery workflow. From here, you can view, edit, and drill down into individual objects in each blueprint. The analytics driven by radar arm you with key information to assist you in recovery. The green shield indicates the last point in time where 0 anomalies were flagged and a prime candidate for recovery. As we save the configuration, we also direct the system to pause if it is interrupted during the recovery process. At the confirmation page, we type in the word blueprint and click Recover to initiate the workflow. To view the progress of the recovery task, we simply click the Go to Recoveries button to monitor the progress. With Rubrik Polaris, you gain the integration of data insight and orchestrated DR so you can quickly and efficiently assess an attack and recover. Thank you for joining the final webinar of the series. Be on the lookout for our latest summer release, as well as additional content with a focus on security. Back to you, David.
All right. Excellent presentation. Love the demo as well, Jeff. Thanks very much. For everyone out there in the audience, I just brought up the poll question on your screen that says, what additional information would you like about the Rubrik solution? And now it's time for some Q&A. We're here to take your questions. If you have a question about protection of your data from ransomware, how the Rubrik solution works, the new AppFlow feature and functionality, now's the time to get it in. Don't forget about our best question prize as well. So, Jeff, you ready for some Q&A?
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. All right. So let's see. First question I wanted to ask you is about AppFlows. Is this, in terms of the architecture, did you say this is a SaaS service that fits into Radar, or exactly how does it fit in?
Yeah, so it is a module that's provided via Polaris, but it essentially, we've created the integrations for those 2 modules to work together. So information from Radar can be used, in the AppFlows recoveries workflows.
Got it. Okay. And it's Polaris that's a SaaS service. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, and that's the platform in which these modules or SaaS applications reside. So each customer has their own internal database and collections and information that we can use in order to orchestrate these recoveries.
Okay. So it's Radar that identifies that ransomware has infected some data, and then it's AppFlow that initiates the recovery?
Correct. Yeah. So it's really the trio, right? As I like to think about it, is radar, sonar, and app flows all work together in conjunction. In the event of a ransomware event, so radar can do the detection. Look at the anomalies within the backups across multiple servers within an application, and then we can also answer the question of what type of content, if there is any sensitive content within those systems as well, because security operations is going to want to know that the answer to that question as soon as they know there's some sort of compromise. They kind of have to assume that there's a potential of exfiltration, that helps in their discovery.
Absolutely. And so one of the things that I noticed about this is the ability to fail back, because I know with, some DR solutions that I've looked at in the past, fail over works, but fail back is kind of like you can figure that out for yourself. So I think
Mhm.
that's a really cool feature. The other thing that I noticed in here is the testing. So can you tell us a little bit about what sort of testing can be done, and is it would the testing happen without any sort of interruption to the applications that are running?
Yeah, so you could essentially put this into a bubble, right? And these are features that other solutions provide, and they've done a very good job at doing that. So we've replicated that model. But back to your point about the reversal and the inverse direction, in terms of fail back, that is a tricky scenario, especially when it comes to backup and recovery, because you often have to understand if you're going to have that system running in that failover location for X amount of time, which is likely going to be the case. We want to be able to continue on in the snapshot chain and make sure we're still doing incrementals, and that's where the essentially the awareness and like the cohesiveness of the solution itself, to be aware of that snapshot chain, so we can continue to take incrementals. We can apply the workflow for the failback, and the same goes in the other direction.
Very nice. And in terms of what clouds you could fail over into, I see VMware Cloud on AWS listed here on the solution brief in the handouts tab, but are there other options?
Yeah, and just for clarification, our product released for this summer will be for site to site on prem initially, and then I can't really speak to the particular public clouds that will be failing over to or have the capabilities to fail over to, but that is something that is certainly being actively worked on.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay. And then there's a question here that came in. They're asking, how is immutability or air gap achieved? Are those things the same or different?
Yeah, so immutability is essentially the term used to say that we don't make any modifications, or modifications can't be made to the backup files. Um, and then in terms of air gap, definition would be it's disconnected from network, um, I guess, resources, if you will. So the way that we consider our product is we're in the sweet spot between recoverability and security, right? So if we think about the best case air gap scenario, we take a backup, it's on tape, it's in a vault, it's locked away, and near the middle of the core of the earth, if you will. It's like awesome, right? The recoverability is really the key part here, because if it takes too long to retrieve those tapes, and then recover them, the ransom is already going to likely be paid, right? And this is where we want to mitigate and balance that. So I know that's like a long-winded answer to that particular question, but it is nuanced, especially when we're talking about both backup security and then the ability to recover quickly. That makes sense.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that because I think those are often confused. Um, Another question here, Warren is asking. He says, they have a Synology NAS. Could Rubrik be used to protect data that's on that NAS?
Yes, absolutely. So we can support any SMB or NFS protocols, in that regard, in terms of uh, NAS vendors we don't have any snapshot integration with, and those work very well. And the reason why is because um, we use it's libNFS and libSMB, which have some optimizations in terms of scanning. So that helps out in that process within NAS backups that makes it very difficult. But really, what the biggest advantage is the management of the snapshot and you have incremental forever approach once we have a full backup contained in the system. So that's where there's just a lot of advantages. NAS backups are really difficult and challenging. Um, yeah, and I challenge everyone to definitely explore other things that we do there.
Okay. Okay. And then there's a question here. Bradford's asking, is it sonar that's used to identify the best restore or recovery point? And I know that comes up because, sometimes ransomware, you're not quite sure exactly when it started and what point should you roll back to. Is it sonar that identifies that or something else?
That would be radar. Yeah, so that's
Radar.
going to be
Okay.
looking for the anomalies within the systems, and give a recommendation. Um, and this is all good information, because what's going to happen in those types of scenarios is IT operations and security operations are going to work hand in hand, right? I mean, and more than likely, infrastructure is going to support security operations and their decision making into which point in time. These data points are very good if you perhaps don't have a security operations department. That's very common. Or if you do, then you can collaborate with real information that's pulled in from the backups.
Okay. And I want to remind everyone about the poll question that's on the screen there. Make sure that you respond to that. We do appreciate your feedback. There's a question here about how does the automation and the policy work. I see that in the diagram of the app flows solution brief right here, right in the middle. There's an SLA policy engine. Can you talk a little bit about exactly what that does and the purpose of that in this scenario?
Yeah, so there's essentially a tie-in that it basically will use the SLA information or what objects we're protecting in that in order to populate the blueprint. So that's where you get that, I guess, the inheritability of protection. If you had like an application separated by like a folder, which is very common. Um, so you could apply a blueprint there, and then if you were to add servers, say if you had additional web servers and middleware, et cetera, then that would also fall into that blueprint.
Got it. Okay. And then, what about there's another question here when it comes to case studies. Does Rubrik have case studies they're asking that talk about how this type of solution has been used to help other companies?
Yeah, and that's currently in the works right now. We have a handful of customers that are running it before the GA release.
Okay, nice. And I'm sure there's other case studies, not for this, not for AppFlow specifically, but for Rubrik just in general.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Sorry, I didn't quite get the context of the question, but yes,
Yeah,
there are.
yeah. Yeah, I know I've seen, videos even on other events that we've done. For example, I think it was the city of Durham that talked about how they used Rubrik to, rapidly restore from a ransomware, scenario. So it was very, um, compelling to see that type of, story from a customer. All right, let's see, another question here. When it comes to Rubrik, is it, hardware? Is it software? Do you deploy it as a hardware appliance, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I mean, I always like to think of the product as a piece of software, but then we do deploy on third-party hardware as well as our own Supermicro servers. Right, so I mean, you kind of have to really conceptualize it as a piece of software that encapsulates the storage management, the job creation and scheduling, and really the life cycle of backups from their cradle to grave, if you will.
Okay. And I want to again point everyone to the handouts tab. I just noticed the second link there is a Rubrik blog entitled The Magic of an Immutable Backup Architecture. And this is by a friend of mine, Chris Wall. So many of you may know him. And it goes into great detail back to that question about immutability versus air gapped. It's got some real nice diagrams here and everything. I think I'm going to reread this again after the webinar because that looks like a great resource. And so let's see. I think we've covered pretty much all the questions that have come in so far. Jeff, anything further you want to add?
Uh, no, it looks like there was a licensing question. Let's see here. Licensing is essentially, fully um, uh, available, I guess, if you will. Like we don't do, a la carte licensing in terms of features, uh, unless you go to things that are in Polaris. Those are add-on features, but really, what most customers adopt is a subscription model that includes, all of those components, right? Because we really want to endorse the idea that the insight that you get from the Polaris modules and the capabilities of recovery, they all work together, very tightly in order to be able to provide a really good solution.
Awesome. All right. Well, Jeff, it's been really great having you on the Security Master Class series. Thank you so much for all your excellent presentations and demos. I learned a lot. I'm sure the audience did as well. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And thank you to everyone out there in the audience for joining us on the event. Don't forget about the handouts tab there. If you haven't seen the previous three episodes in the Security Masterclass series, there are links right there that'll take you actually just to YouTube videos, and you can watch those. They're short, they're information packed, and I'm sure you'll learn a lot from that as well. Don't forget about the um, poll question that's right there on your screen. I'll leave that up. One more chance to respond to that while I announce our Amazon $300 gift card winner. This is going out to Timothy Garay from Indiana. Congratulations, Timothy Garay from Indiana. And thank you to everyone out there for all the excellent questions. We will reach out to the best question prize winner as well after the event via email. I hope that you learned a lot and have a great day. Don't forget to check out Rubrik.com for more information on protecting your data from ransomware. See you next time. Bye bye.